A war began, ships fired, a palace collapsed, and it was all over in just 38 minutes. Imagine waking up one morning, declaring war on one of the most powerful empires in human history. And by the time you finished your breakfast, the war was already over. That is not fiction. That is not a joke. That actually happened. On the morning of August 27th, 1896, a war began and ended in just 38 minutes. 5 warships, 3,000 soldiers, hundreds of lives lost. And it was all over before most people even knew it had started. This is the story of the Anglo-Zanzibar War, the shortest, most brutal, and most forgotten war in the history of mankind. To understand this war, you first need to understand Zanzibar. Picture a small, beautiful island sitting just off the eastern coast of Africa, modern-day Tanzania. In the 1800s, Zanzibar was not just an island, it was a powerhouse, a center of trade, spices, and wealth. Its sultans ruled with authority, and the island was known across the world for its riches. But there was a dark side. Zanzibar was also one of the largest slave trading hubs in the entire world. And that dark secret would eventually drag it into the crosshairs of the most powerful empire on Earth, the British Empire. By 1890, Britain had declared Zanzibar a protectorate. In simple terms, Zanzibar was technically still a kingdom, but Britain was pulling all the strings from behind the curtain. They had veto power over who became Sultan. They controlled the military. They were running the show, and the Zanzibari people hated it. On August 25th, 1896, the Sultan of Zanzibar, Hamad bin Thuwaini, suddenly dropped dead. No warning, no illness. She just gone. Many suspected poison. Many pointed fingers at his own nephew, a bold, ambitious young man named Khalid bin Bargash. But nothing could be proven. What happened next was shocking even by the standards of the time. Within hours of the Sultan's death, before the body was even buried, Khalid marched straight into the royal palace and declared himself the new Sultan of Zanzibar. No permission, no approval, no waiting. And here was the problem. Under the agreement between Britain and Zanzibar, no new sultan could take power without British approval. Khalid knew this. He simply did not care. He raised his flag over the palace. He summoned nearly 3,000 soldiers, servants, and loyal supporters to surround the building. He brought out artillery cannons and aimed them directly at the British warships sitting in the harbor. Khalid was sending a message, loud and clear. He was not asking for permission. He was daring the British to stop him. The British consul Basil Cave watched all of this unfold and immediately sent an urgent message to London, requesting permission to use military force if negotiations failed. London replied fast. Permission granted. On the morning of August 26th, 2 more British cruisers sailed into Zanzibar harbor. The message was becoming impossible to ignore. By now, 5 powerful Royal Navy warships were anchored just outside the palace, their cannons loaded and ready. At 8 o'clock in the morning on August 27th, Rear Admiral Harry Rawson sent a final ultimatum directly to Khalid. It was simple. It was cold. And it left no room for misunderstanding. Lower your flag, leave the palace, surrender your weapons. You have until 9 a.m., so to 1 hour. Inside the palace, Khalid gathered his men, around 3,000 of them, soldiers, palace guards, civilians who believed in his cause, even servants who had nowhere else to go. They had cannons. They had machine guns. They had a royal yacht armed with weapons sitting in the harbor. Khalid looked at his forces. He looked at the British ships, and he made a decision that would cost him everything. He sent a message back to the British. "We have no intention of hauling down our flag. We do not believe you will open fire." He was wrong. At exactly 9:02 a.m., the British opened fire. What followed was not a battle. It was a massacre. The royal palace, built from timber and stone, began to crumble almost immediately under the bombardment. Cannonballs tore through the walls. The building caught fire. The defending artillery was destroyed within minutes. The Zanzibari cannons that had been aimed at the British ships never got a single effective shot off. In the harbor, the Zanzibari royal yacht, a small armed vessel called the Glasgow, tried to engage the British warships. It was sunk in minutes. Its crew was pulled from the water by the very British sailors who had just destroyed their ship. Inside the palace, chaos. 3,000 people scrambling, screaming, running for their lives as the building collapsed around them. And where was Khalid? He was already gone. The man who had dared the British Empire. The man who had raised his flag and declared himself Sultan. The man who had looked at 5 warships and said, "I don't believe you'll fire." How he had slipped out of the back of the palace during the bombardment and ran straight to the German consulate, begging for protection. At 9:40 a.m., the white flag of surrender was raised over what remained of the palace. 38 minutes. That was all it took. Over 500 Zanzibari soldiers and civilians were killed or wounded. One British sailor was slightly injured. The most one-sided, most devastating, and most mercifully short war in recorded history was over. The British wasted no time. Within hours, they installed their preferred candidate, Hamud bin Mohammed, as the new Sultan of Zanzibar. A ruler they could control. A ruler who would not challenge them. As for Khalid, the man who started it all, the Germans refused to hand him over. They secretly smuggled him out of Zanzibar on a naval vessel in the dead of night. He spent years in German East Africa, protected by Britain's imperial rivals. But when World War I broke out in 1916 and British forces swept through East Africa, Khalid was finally captured. He was exiled, first to the Seychelles, then to the remote island of St. Helena, the same island where Napoleon had been sent to die. Eventually, in his old age, Khalid was allowed to return to East Africa. He died there in 1927. A man who had once dared to defy the greatest empire on earth, forgotten, exiled, and buried far from the palace he had seized for just 38 minutes. Zanzibar remained under British control for decades. The palace he had defended was never fully rebuilt, and the masts of the sunken royal yacht could be seen sticking out above the harbor waterline for the next 18 years. A permanent reminder of the morning everything changed. 38 minutes. That is all it took to end a kingdom, crush a rebellion, and remind the world of what empire truly meant. History is full of wars that lasted years, decades, even centuries, but none were as brutal, as fast, or as forgotten as the war that ended before most people had finished their morning tea.